Hi everybody, it's Mr. Gray here. Thank you again for another great week. We're kind of starting to get into the swing of things now, into the rhythm of school. The kids start to know where all the materials are, where they need to go, what they need to do, and we're really kind of growing our way into that right now, and so we're having a really good time. That also means some things are new for you, the parents at home. Don't forget, the kids' online work is in Google Classroom, and some of it they're doing by hand, and some of it they're doing digitally. And you can just ask at any time if they mention something like, "Oh, where is that?" It's Google Classroom. Just ask them, "Can I see it?" And they should pull it up, ready to go for you anytime. We're also getting adjusted and getting started with some grades. So some grades will start to show up starting like this weekend or next week. So there'll be a couple of reading grades and a math grade, and then eventually a writing grade, probably by the end of next week or the start of the week after that. So just know that those are coming and those are available. We're, again, kind of working our way into those. There's a new rubric the kids haven't seen that I showed you to back to school night. So for a couple of the assignments, they're going to grade themselves on the rubric. Then I'm going to grade them, and they're going to look and compare those and say, what was I surprised by that Mr. Gray said in a positive way or a negative way. Another thing that's happening pretty soon is PTA movie night is coming up. That is Friday, September 22nd at 7 p.m. I'm sure I'll get an email about that from PTA. And then the very last big announcement I have is that on Monday, I'm going to send out an email to everyone about our upcoming field trip to the OCC Planetarium. There'll be a bunch of information about that and collecting field trip donation money, and then also chaperones and a permission slip link. So expect that on Monday morning, and I'm sending that out at the same time as the other 5th grade teachers. That's why it's coming out on Monday morning, but just expect to see that at that time. There's a couple other links on the link page that I have on our class website about a STEM showdown, a science activity that Mr. Marco sent out that's coming up in just a week or two, and then also if you're interested in being a library volunteer. So those are all the big announcements for this week. In reading, we're going to do a couple of things. So we're going to finish the read aloud that the kids have been listening to. We've been doing a little bit of work here and there on the Wild Robot. So they're going to turn in a project where the kids actually make merit badges. You're thinking of Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. So they made merit badges already for the main character, Roz, who's a robot stranded on this island. They're going to do that again, and their grade will be based on how they raised their level from the earlier merit badges to the current one, and they're going to prove it to me. So we're trying to reinforce this idea of getting better. I am able to do one thing, and I learned something new, or I stepped it up in some way, and so it's going to be a grade that comes in for reading. They'll also have another one. So just expect to see those in Aries, but that we'll be working on that next week. And then we're going to start just a little over a week. We're going to be working on a novel study. And we're going to be reading Home of the Brave by Katherine Applegate. It's a beautiful story, and there's lots of things to talk about, but their kids are going to be working in their reader's notebook, collecting information, analyzing the story, and then we'll be having discussions in class about that. So expect to hear about The Wild Robot and Home of the Brave next week. For writing, the kids are actually going to finish publishing the piece they've been working on for the last week or two. On Monday, the kids will meet with their partner, and their partner is going to give them final feedback on their piece, and then they'll have to go back and do final editing. So spelling, capitalization, punctuation, little last minute tweaks, anything like that is going in at that time. Later on in the week, the kids will get to read each other's that will celebrate how wonderful their writing is and go over the rubric and how it's graded and things like that. That'll happen toward the end of the week, and then the week after that we'll start our first real full writing unit. But this kind of got the kids acquainted with how the writing goes, what the routines are, how they work, how they turn things in. And so hopefully we're all getting acquainted with how that works. But that's what we're working on for writing, is finishing up that first piece. In math, we're continuing studying volume. The kids this week had a very messy, muddy project, not literally, but they had to figure out how many humans could fit in Portable 4 in a couple different ways. So we were studying the maximum occupancy of this classroom, and they had to make all sorts of assumptions about what they thought about that. And so tomorrow, on Friday, the kids are going to present their results. So we're going to really look carefully at why people got different answers. And then next week, we're going to kind of go back to some more like practice problems where we're just making sure everybody can calculate volume, and then we're going to move on to irregular figures. So you can think of like a three-dimensional T and how to calculate the volume for three-dimensional figures. And then we'll take that knowledge and apply it to a volume problem involving Girl Scout cookies and the back of a car. So that'll be something more that like groups are working on together. But so we're kind of going back and forth at this point, and that will kind of finish up our volume work. We'll also have a short quiz in the middle of the week that will end up in the gradebook for social studies. We've quickly been looking at different Native American tribes around the United States, meaning in different climate regions. So we looked at a tribe and what their weather might be like in the Pacific Northwest, in the desert Southwest, in the eastern woodlands, and in the Great Plains. And so we're using that information as a jumping off point for how different Native American tribes existed, like what their lifestyles were like based on where they lived. And so next week we're going to look at a smorgasbord of primary source documents, and the kids are going to have to look at those documents and based on what's in them, decide which tribe they go with. Since we know about the climate and the weather that they lived in, we know a little bit more about them, so we can figure out where these things are matched with. And then finally, at the end of the week, we're going to kind of look at these comparisons between the tribes. So we looked at their weather. At the end of this week, we looked at some different stories from the tribe and what was important to them, and what came through was elements that we could study based on where they live. So there are these like tribes, or these stories from Native American tribes, but what we're able to glean from those are certain characteristics that were true of a tribe that lived in a snowy area or a very hot area. So we're kind of learning about their culture in that way, and finally, some of the actual tools that they use or ways that they lived. And then so we're gonna make those comparisons at the end. Oh, these two tribes were kind of like each other, and that makes sense based on their climate and the tools and things that we found based on primary source documents. The kids have science lab with Ms. DeMarco. We will finally start our actual science in class starting the next week, but it will match closely with Ms. DeMarco. For language, we'll start with vocabulary. For language this year, we're going to be bouncing back and forth between grammar, vocabulary, and spelling. So we'll be kind of moving back between those, and oftentimes we will start out with some kind of lesson or practice early in the week, usually Monday, and then we'll have some kind of either creation or a quiz later in the week. So starting next week, the kids are going to have a vocabulary lesson. We're going to be studying several vocabulary words that come from Wordly Wise grade 6. We're going to do a couple activities to try to ingrain those words into our lexicon so we can actually use them and understand them and know what they mean and use them correctly. And then later in the week, we're going to have a short quiz where the kids are writing a piece using many of those words. And you'll see that grade. Again, about the grades, we're getting acquainted to all this, so we're learning about how things are graded and what happens. So there's going to be lots of discussion between the kids, why is this the grade that I got? And that's totally fine. And of course, if you have questions, you can let me know. For leadership on Monday, the kids are going to be reading about and watching a video about Paul Public Charter School students who worked on a really great project. And I'll let them tell you about it next week. But the habit for the week, the leadership habit, is planning ahead and setting goals, which is a wonderful 5th grade goal for everyone in the class to start thinking about and starting to do better in order to show leadership. That's all I have for you this week. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'm having a tremendous time with your students. Their thinking and hard work and determination has been a real joy to be around. So I think we're having a great time. And like I said, have a great weekend. See you next time. Bye-bye.